They say every murder leaves behind three things: a victim, a killer, and a secret. But sometimes the secret is harder to find than the killer. I'm Detective Ethan Cross, and this is another case from my files. Listen carefully. Every clue matters. Every suspect has a story. And before this episode ends, one truth will change everything. Welcome to Murder Mystery Crime Podcast. Case number 2. The Last Broadcast Murder. Chapter 1. The Murder. The red on-air light had been glowing for exactly 3 hours. Millions of listeners had heard radio legend Jack Mercer sign off the way he always did. Be kind to one another, and I'll see you tomorrow night. But tomorrow never came. Minutes after the broadcast ended, producer Lisa Bennett entered Studio B with Jack's usual cup of coffee for the post-show meeting. She stopped in the doorway. The microphone was still on. Jack Mercer sat slumped over the broadcast desk. His headphones rested around his neck. His eyes stared blankly toward the glowing on-air sign. The coffee cup slipped from Lisa's hand and shattered across the studio floor. She screamed. Within minutes, police surrounded the station. Detective Ethan Cross stepped beneath the yellow crime scene tape and into Studio B. The room was strangely peaceful. No overturned chairs, no broken equipment, no signs of a struggle. Just silence. Cross slowly walked around the broadcasting desk. "What do we know?" he asked. Officer Mills looked at her notes. Victim is Jack Mercer, 58 years old. Pronounced dead at the scene. Cause? Medical examiner isn't ready to say. Cross looked around the room. Anyone else in the building? 6 people. Cross raised an eyebrow. Who? The producer, the co-host, the station manager, a former employee, Jack's ex-wife, and an anonymous caller who signed in to meet Jack after the show. Cross looked toward the studio door. Security cameras? Officer Mills frowned. That's where things get strange. Go on. The hallway cameras stopped recording for exactly 12 minutes. Cross looked back toward the silent microphone. 12 minutes. Officer Mills nodded. The exact 12 minutes between the end of the broadcast and the discovery of the body. Cross noticed something on the mixing console, a single sheet of paper. On it, written in black marker, were 5 words. The truth was on air. Cross carefully placed the note into an evidence bag. Find out who wrote this. Officer Mills nodded. Outside, reporters crowded behind police barricades. The story was already making headlines. America's favorite late-night voice, dead inside his own studio. 6 people remained inside the building. Every one of them had a reason to meet Jack Mercer that night. And somewhere inside the station, one person knew exactly what happened after the microphones went silent. Chapter 2. The Producer. Producer Lisa Bennett hadn't slept. She sat alone in interview room 2, her eyes fixed on the tabletop. A paper cup of untouched coffee rested in front of her. Detective Ethan Cross entered with Officer Mills. Lisa Bennett? She nodded. Cross sat across from her. You found Jack Mercer? Yes. Tell me exactly what happened. Lisa took a deep breath. The show ended at midnight. Jack always stayed behind for about 15 minutes to review the next night's topics. You brought him coffee? Every night. And last night, I made the coffee, walked to Studio B, opened the door, and he was already dead. Cross waited. What was your relationship with Jack? Lisa smiled sadly. He gave me my first job in radio. You admired him? I did. Did you always get along? The smile disappeared. No. Cross leaned forward. When was your last argument? She hesitated. Yesterday. What was it about? He wanted to fire one of our interns. And you disagreed? I begged him to reconsider. Cross made a note. Did the conversation become heated? Lisa looked away. I raised my voice. Did he? He slammed his headphones onto the desk. What did he say? Lisa swallowed. He said, "This is my show, my decision. If you don't like it, you can leave with them." Officer Mills looked up. And your response? I told him he was turning into someone nobody wanted to work for. Silence filled the room. Cross asked quietly, "Did you threaten him?" "No." "Did you wish him harm?" "No." "But I was angry." Cross nodded. Were you the last person to see him alive? Lisa thought for several seconds. I don't know. What do you mean? I left the control room after the show. Then, I heard voices. Cross stopped writing. Voices? Yes. How many? 2. A man and Jack. Officer Mills leaned forward. Did you recognize the other voice? Lisa shook her head. No. Could you hear what they were saying? Only bits. What bits? Lisa closed her eyes, trying to remember. I heard Jack say, she paused, you should have stayed away. Cross looked at Mills. What else? The other man said, another pause. You know why I'm here. The room became silent. Cross asked, did it sound like they were fighting? Lisa nodded slowly. They weren't yelling, they were angry. Cross wrote the words carefully. Why didn't you investigate? Lisa sighed. Jack met difficult guests all the time. I assumed it was another private conversation. Cross closed his notebook. One more question. Lisa nodded. When you entered the studio and found Jack? Yes? What was the first thing you noticed? She answered without hesitation. The microphone. The microphone? It was still live. Cross frowned. What do you mean? Lisa leaned forward. The on-air light was still glowing. Officer Mills looked surprised. But the show had ended. Cross's eyes narrowed. So why now? He stopped mid-sentence. The room fell silent. If the microphone was still live, then somewhere there might be one final recording, one that no one had listened to. And if it existed, it had captured the last moments before Jack Mercer died. Chapter 3. The Co-Host. The hallway outside Studio B was eerily quiet. The station had gone dark after police cleared the building. The only sounds were the hum of computer servers and the faint buzz of fluorescent lights. Detective Ethan Cross stopped outside another interview room. Inside sat Ryan Cole, Jack Mercer's co-host for nearly 6 years. Ryan was impeccably dressed, but his leg bounced nervously beneath the table. Cross entered. Mr. Cole. Ryan nodded. I suppose it's my turn. Cross sat down across from him. You worked with Jack every night, 5 nights a week. For 6 years? Ryan smiled faintly. Long enough to know exactly when he was in a good mood and exactly when to stay out of his way. Officer Mills placed a recorder on the table. It was reported the two of you argued yesterday. Ryan laughed bitterly. Reported? He shook his head. The whole station heard us. Cross opened his notebook. What started it? Ryan leaned back. I was offered another job. Where? A national network. And Jack knew? Ryan nodded. He found out before I could tell him. What happened? Ryan's expression hardened. He accused me of abandoning the show. Were you? I was considering it. Cross asked quietly, did he take that well? Ryan let out a sarcastic laugh. Jack didn't take anything well. Silence. Cross waited. Ryan finally continued. He said I'd never have a career without him. Officer Mills looked up. And your response? I told him maybe it was time to find out. Cross watched Ryan carefully. Did the conversation end there? No. Ryan's jaw tightened. He stepped closer. How close? So close I could smell the coffee on his breath. And then? Ryan paused. He jabbed a finger into my chest. Cross wrote another note. What did he say? Ryan stared at the table. He said, if you walk away from this show, don't expect anyone to remember your name. Officer Mills asked, what did you say? Ryan answered without hesitation. I told him the only reason people still listened was because I hadn't left already. The room fell silent. Cross looked directly at him. Did anyone witness this? The entire production staff. So everyone knew there was bad blood between you. Ryan nodded. Yes. Cross changed direction. Where were you after the show ended? I went to my office. For how long? About 10 minutes. Can anyone verify that? Ryan hesitated. I don't know. Cross noticed the hesitation. You don't know, or no one can? Ryan sighed. No one can. Your keycard accessed the hallway leading to Studio B at 12:07 a.m. Ryan looked surprised. It did? Cross slid the security log across the table. It says you were outside the studio. Ryan stared at the report. I never went inside, but you were there. Ryan stopped speaking. Cross leaned forward. Why? Ryan rubbed his forehead. I heard voices. Cross and Mills exchanged a glance. Whose? Jack's. Ryan swallowed. And someone else's. Cross asked quietly, Did you recognize the second voice? Ryan slowly shook his head. No. What happened next? I reached for the studio door. And? Ryan looked genuinely shaken. It was locked. Silence filled the room. Cross frowned. Locked from the inside? Ryan nodded. I knocked once. No answer. I figured Jack wanted privacy. Cross stood and walked toward the interview room window. The producer heard two voices. Ryan looked up. I wasn't imagining it. Cross turned. Did you hear anything else? Ryan closed his eyes. There was one sentence. What was it? Ryan opened his eyes. Jack said, "You can't bury this forever." Cross's expression changed. Are you certain? Ryan nodded. I'll never forget it. Cross thanked him and left the room with Officer Mills. As they walked down the hallway, Mills broke the silence. The producer hears an argument. The co-host hears an argument. But neither of them can identify the second person. Cross stopped walking. He looked through the glass window into the empty radio studio. The microphone was still live. Mills nodded. And? Cross's eyes fixed on the broadcasting desk. If Jack's microphone was broadcasting, a slow realization crossed his face. Then, someone else's voice may have been broadcasting too. For the first time since the investigation began, Detective Cross believed the station itself might be the only witness that never lied. Chapter 4. The Station Manager. The station manager's office overlooked the newsroom. Normally, the glass walls gave him a commanding view of the entire station. Today, they gave him a front-row seat to a crime scene. Harold Green sat behind his desk, his suit wrinkled and his tie loosened. News crews gathered outside the building while employees whispered in every hallway. Detective Ethan Cross entered without a word. Harold stood. I've already spoken with the police. I'm asking different questions, Cross replied. Harold slowly sat back down. I figured you would. Cross opened his notebook. How long have you managed WRCN radio? 12 years. And Jack Mercer? He was our biggest personality, our highest ratings, our highest paid employee. Cross nodded. Was the station doing well financially? Harold hesitated. It had seen better years. How much better? Harold looked toward the window. We've been losing advertisers. Cross wrote quietly. So Jack's show was under pressure. It kept the station alive. Officer Mills asked, did Jack know the financial situation? Harold laughed bitterly. He knew everything. Cross looked up. And he used it. What do you mean? He demanded another raise. Officer Mills frowned. When? Yesterday afternoon. Cross paused. The same day he died. Harold nodded. He walked into this office, closed the door and said if I didn't give him a new contract. Harold stopped speaking. He'd leave. Cross remained expressionless. What did you tell him? I told him the station couldn't afford it. And? Harold sighed. He said maybe the station couldn't afford to lose him either. Silence settled over the office. Cross asked, did your conversation end peacefully? Harold shook his head. No. He walked out. Officer Mills asked, were you angry? I was terrified. Why terrified? Because he was right. Cross closed his notebook. Where were you after the show ended? In my office. Alone? Yes. Officer Mills placed another report on the desk. Your keycard accessed Studio B's hallway at 12:09 a.m. Harold stared at the report. I never entered the studio. We didn't say you did, Cross replied. Then why was I there? Cross watched him carefully. You tell me. Harold thought for a long moment. Then his eyes widened. The lights. What lights? The hallway lights flickered. Officer Mills exchanged a glance with Cross. You remembered something. Harold nodded. I stepped out because the power dipped. Cross wrote quickly. What happened? I looked toward Studio B. And? The on-air light was still glowing. Cross remained silent. Harold continued. I remember thinking Jack must still be recording something. Officer Mills asked, did you hear anyone? Harold closed his eyes. Not clearly. But I heard Jack raise his voice. Cross leaned forward. What did he say? Harold answered slowly. If this gets out, all of us are finished. The room became completely silent. Cross looked at Officer Mills. 3 witnesses, 3 different conversations, 3 different statements. Yet one phrase echoed through all of them. Jack Mercer hadn't been surprised to see the person in the studio. He'd been expecting them. As Cross left the office, he looked through the glass toward Studio B. The microphone still sat where Jack had left it, waiting for someone to press play, because somewhere inside the station's digital archives, the truth might still be recorded. Chapter 5. The Former Employee. The interview room door opened slowly. A uniformed officer escorted Thomas Reed inside. 42 years old, former audio engineer, dismissed from WRCN radio 8 months earlier. Thomas sat without speaking. Detective Ethan Cross entered moments later. "You know why you're here?" Thomas nodded. "Because everyone remembers the guy who got fired." Cross took a seat. "You worked with Jack Mercer?" "For 10 years. And then?" Thomas smiled bitterly. "Jack accused me of leaking confidential show information." "Did you?" "No. But I was fired anyway." Officer Mills switched on the recorder. "Were you angry?" Thomas laughed. "Angry? I lost my career, my pension, my reputation, my marriage, my house." He looked directly at Cross. "So yes, I was angry." Cross remained calm. "Were you at the station last night?" Thomas nodded. "I came to clear my name." Cross raised an eyebrow. "How?" "I found evidence." "What kind?" Thomas reached into his jacket. An officer immediately stepped forward. "It's okay," Thomas said. He slowly removed a flash drive. Cross accepted it carefully. "What's on this?" "Audio files." "What audio files?" "Recordings Jack didn't want anyone to hear." Officer Mills frowned. "Secret recordings?" Thomas nodded. Jack recorded meetings, arguments, phone calls, anything he thought might help him later. Cross looked surprised. "He secretly recorded people?" Thomas nodded. "Everyone." Cross placed the flash drive into an evidence bag. "Why bring this now?" Thomas leaned forward. "Because Jack called me yesterday." Silence. Cross looked up. "He called you?" Thomas nodded. "He wanted to meet." "Here?" "At the station." "What time?" "After the show." Officer Mills checked the timeline. "That puts you inside the building." Thomas nodded. "Did you meet Jack?" Thomas looked away. "No." "What happened?" "I waited." "And?" "He never came." Cross studied him carefully. "You expect us to believe you simply waited?" Thomas reached into his pocket again. This time he removed a visitor badge. The date was printed across the front. 11:37 p.m. Cross examined it. "You checked in?" "Yes." "And checked out?" Thomas shook his head. "I never checked out." Officer Mills frowned. "Why not?" Thomas answered quietly. "Because everyone started screaming." Silence settled over the room. Cross asked one final question. "Did you hear anything while waiting?" Thomas closed his eyes. There was an argument. Cross didn't interrupt. "I couldn't make out every word." Thomas paused. "But I heard Jack say one sentence." "What was it?" Thomas answered softly. "You should never have trusted me." The room fell silent. 4 witnesses, 4 different conversations, 4 different pieces of the same puzzle. Cross stood and walked toward the one-way mirror. He replayed every statement in his mind. "You should have stayed away. You can't bury this forever. If this gets out, all of us are finished. You should never have trusted me." Different words, different witnesses, one unmistakable conclusion. Jack Mercer wasn't having random arguments. He was having different conversations with different people about the same secret. Cross turned toward Officer Mills. "Find out what's on that flash drive." Mills nodded. "If Thomas is telling the truth," Cross finished the sentence, "the motive for Jack's death may have been recorded long before the night he died." Chapter 6. The Ex-Wife. The rain had finally stopped. Detective Ethan Cross parked outside a 2-story brick home just after sunrise. The name on the mailbox read, Emily Mercer. Jack Mercer's ex-wife. She opened the door before he knocked. "I've been expecting you." Cross nodded. "Most people do." Emily stepped aside. The house was quiet. Family photographs lined the hallway. Some included Jack. Most had been turned face down. Cross noticed. "You don't like looking at him anymore." Emily smiled sadly. "I don't like remembering the man he became." Officer Mills activated the recorder. "When did you last see Jack?" Emily folded her hands. "Yesterday." "What time?" "Around 6 o'clock." "Where?" His office. Cross looked up. Why? He asked me to come. What did he want? Emily hesitated. He wanted forgiveness. Silence. Cross raised an eyebrow. For what? Emily laughed once. You'll have to be more specific. Cross remained quiet. Emily continued. Jack lied for a living. Officer Mills looked surprised. He was a radio host. He was also an excellent storyteller. Emily's expression darkened. The problem was that eventually he couldn't tell the difference. Cross made another note. Did you argue? Emily nodded. He wanted another chance. And? I told him there wasn't another chance. What happened next? Emily looked toward the window. He admitted he'd been keeping secrets. Cross leaned forward. What kind of secrets? He wouldn't say. Did he mention anyone? Emily paused. He kept repeating one sentence. What sentence? Emily answered quietly. If the truth comes out, everyone loses. Cross and Officer Mills exchanged a look. It was almost identical to what the station manager had heard. Cross continued. Did Jack seem frightened? Emily nodded immediately. Terrified. Of whom? He wouldn't tell me. What did he say? Emily looked down at her hands. He said someone was coming to see him after the show. Cross stopped writing. Did he tell you who? No. He only said. She hesitated. Tonight, everything ends. Silence filled the room. Cross asked carefully, Did you go to the station? Emily looked him directly in the eyes. Yes. Officer Mills looked surprised. What time? Just after midnight. Cross slowly closed his notebook. You never mentioned that. No one asked. What happened? I parked across the street. And? I saw someone enter the station through the side entrance. Cross's attention sharpened. A man? I couldn't tell. Why not? They were wearing a hood. Cross looked toward Officer Mills. The unknown visitor. Emily continued. I thought it was strange. What happened then? I drove away. You never went inside? She shook her head. No. Cross stood. One last question. Emily nodded. If Jack was so frightened, why didn't he call the police? Because he believed he could talk his way out of anything. She smiled sadly. For years, he always could. As Cross and Mills walked back toward the car, neither spoke. Finally, Mills broke the silence. Now we have 5 people hearing Jack talk about the same secret. Cross nodded. And an ex-wife who places the hooded visitor at the station. He looked back at the radio building in the distance. The secret isn't just the motive anymore. Mills frowned. What is it? Cross answered quietly. It's the reason Jack believed he could survive one final conversation. For the first time in the investigation, Detective Cross wondered if Jack Mercer had invited his own killer to the station. Chapter 7. The Anonymous Caller. The final suspect wasn't an employee, wasn't family, wasn't a friend. No one at WRCN Radio even knew the person's real name. The station's visitor log listed only one entry, Midnight Caller. No address, no phone number, just a handwritten request. Jack knows why I'm here. Detective Ethan Cross stared at the visitor log. Officer Mills broke the silence. Who signs in like that? Someone who expects to be recognized, Cross replied, or someone who doesn't want to be. An hour later, a patrol officer hurried into the briefing room. We found them. Cross looked up. Where? A motel across town. Room 214. The anonymous caller sat alone on the edge of the bed. A small overnight bag rested beside the chair. The person stood as Cross entered. My name is Nathan Brooks. Cross remained expressionless. So, you're the anonymous caller. Nathan nodded. I didn't think I'd stay anonymous for long. Officer Mills activated the recorder. You requested a meeting with Jack Mercer. Yes. Why? Nathan looked down. I wanted answers. About what? My brother. Silence. Cross waited. Nathan continued. My brother worked at the station years ago. What happened? He died. Officer Mills looked up. An accident? Nathan nodded slowly. That's what everyone called it. But you don't believe that. Nathan met Cross's eyes. No. Cross opened his notebook. Did Jack know your brother? They worked together. Were they friends? Nathan gave a bitter smile. That's not the word I'd use. What word would you use? Nathan answered quietly. Connected. Cross leaned forward. Tell me about last night. Nathan nodded. I met Jack after the show. Inside Studio B? Yes. What happened? We talked. Did you argue? Nathan hesitated. We disagreed. About? My brother. Nathan's voice grew softer. I asked him one question. What question? What really happened the night my brother died? The room became silent. Cross watched him carefully. And Jack's answer? Nathan swallowed hard. He said, I've been living with that question for 15 years. Officer Mills looked at Cross. Nathan continued. I told him I wasn't leaving until I heard the truth. Cross asked quietly, Did he tell you? Nathan nodded once. He started to. What did he say? Nathan stared at the table. He admitted. A pause. That people at the station covered up what really happened. Cross's pen stopped moving. A cover-up? Nathan nodded. Before he could explain, he hesitated. Jack grabbed his chest. Silence. Officer Mills leaned forward. What do you mean? He suddenly looked like he couldn't breathe. What did you do? I stood up. And I tried to help him. Nathan's voice trembled. But he collapsed. Cross looked directly at him. Did you touch him? I caught him before he hit the floor. What happened next? Nathan closed his eyes. I panicked. Why? Because I knew exactly how it would look. Cross remained silent. Nathan continued. I heard footsteps in the hallway, so I left. You didn't call 911? Nathan shook his head. No. Why? Because no one would believe I didn't kill him. The room fell silent. Cross slowly closed his notebook. Nathan Brooks had admitted being the last known person to see Jack Mercer alive, but his story matched the medical examiner's preliminary findings. No struggle. No signs of assault. Just a man collapsing during a conversation. As Cross and Mills left the motel, Mills broke the silence. So is Nathan our killer? Cross looked back at the motel. I don't know. He paused. But I do know one thing. What's that? The answer to Jack Mercer's death, he looked toward the city skyline, is hidden somewhere in a secret that began 15 years ago. And for the first time since the investigation began, Detective Ethan Cross believed the mystery wasn't about what happened last night. It was about what happened 15 years earlier. Chapter 8. The Evidence. Detective Ethan Cross placed the case file on the conference room table. For the first time since Jack Mercer's death, every suspect's statement had been recorded. Every interview, every timeline, every contradiction. Officer Mills entered carrying a cardboard evidence box. The forensic lab just delivered the last items. Cross looked up. Let's see them. Mills carefully removed each item. Jack's headphones, his coffee mug, the handwritten note, the visitor log, the flash drive recovered from Thomas Reed. Finally, a small digital audio recorder. Cross frowned. Where did that come from? It was found behind the broadcast console. Cross picked it up. It wasn't logged at the scene. The crime scene photographer missed it. A technician found it while disconnecting equipment. Cross turned the recorder over. One file remained. REC 147. He looked at Mills. Play it. She pressed the button. Static filled the room. Then, Jack's voice. I'm recording this because if you're hearing it, something has gone terribly wrong. Cross and Mills exchanged a look. The recording continued. I've spent 15 years pretending I didn't know the truth. A long pause. I was afraid. More silence. Then another voice, a man's voice. I didn't come here for excuses. Nathan Brooks. Cross recognized it immediately. Jack sighed. I know. Nathan spoke again. My brother deserved better. Another pause. He deserved the truth. Jack answered quietly. You're right. Cross leaned closer to the speaker. Jack continued. There was no accident. Silence filled the room. Officer Mills stopped taking notes. Jack's breathing became noticeably heavier. They told us, if we stayed quiet, the station would survive. Nathan's voice grew calmer. Who told you? The recording crackled. Jack answered. The board, management, all of us. We signed the papers. Cross looked sharply at Mills. The station covered it up. The recording continued. Nathan asked one final question. So why tell me now? Jack didn't answer immediately. Instead, his breathing changed. Slow, uneven, painful. Nathan's voice suddenly became urgent. Jack, Another pause. Jack? A chair scraped across the floor. The recorder captured the sound of someone stumbling. Nathan shouted, "Jack!" A loud crash echoed through the speakers. Then, silence. 23 seconds of silence. Footsteps. Heavy breathing. A door opening. A door closing. End of recording. Officer Mills slowly pressed stop. Neither detective spoke. Finally, Cross broke the silence. He wasn't attacked. Mills nodded. He collapsed. Cross looked at the evidence board. The recording confirms Nathan's story, and confirms the station hid something 15 years ago. Cross stood, but it also creates another question. Mills frowned. What question? Cross held up the recorder. 5. Who started this recording? Neither Jack nor Nathan mentioned turning it on. Someone else had. Someone who knew that conversation would matter. Someone who had been listening all along. The investigation wasn't over. It had just uncovered a second mystery. Someone inside WRCN radio had been secretly recording far more than broadcasts, and Detective Ethan Cross intended to find out why. Chapter 9. The Reconstruction. The conference room at WRCN radio was packed. The station manager, the producer, the co-host, the former employee, Emily Mercer, Nathan Brooks. No one spoke. Detective Ethan Cross stood at the front of the room, beside a whiteboard covered with photographs, timelines, and evidence. Officer Mills closed the door. Cross looked around the room. "Thank you for coming." Harold Green folded his arms. "Are you finally going to tell us who killed Jack?" Cross answered calmly. "Yes." The room fell silent. Cross walked to the evidence board. "For days we've been asking the wrong question." He wrote one sentence across the board. "One who killed Jack Mercer." He stared at it, then crossed it out. Everyone watched. "What should we be asking?" Lisa Bennett whispered. Cross wrote another question. "What happened inside Studio B?" Cross picked up the digital recorder. "This recording changes everything." He pressed play. Only the final moments echoed through the room. Jack's labored breathing. Nathan calling his name. The crash. Silence. Cross stopped the playback. No sounds of violence. No struggle. No attack. Nathan lowered his head. "I told you." Cross nodded. "You did." Cross turned toward the station manager, Harold Green. Harold looked uneasy. "You knew about the cover-up." Harold sighed. "I knew pieces of it." "You signed the settlement?" "Yes." "You agreed never to discuss it?" "Yes." Cross turned toward Lisa. "You suspected something." "I did. But Jack never trusted you with the whole story." She quietly nodded. Cross faced Ryan. "You heard Jack arguing." Ryan replied, "I thought someone was threatening him." "They weren't." Cross looked toward Nathan. "They were confronting him." Nathan closed his eyes. "I only wanted the truth." Cross slowly walked across the room. 15 years ago, an employee died. The station ruled it an accident. The paperwork was signed. The story disappeared. He paused. But guilt doesn't disappear. No one spoke. Cross stopped beside the station manager. Jack carried that guilt every day. Harold looked away. He wanted to tell the truth. Cross nodded. Yesterday he finally decided to. He pointed toward Nathan. He invited Nathan Brooks to the station. Nathan looked surprised. "He invited me?" Cross nodded. "He intended to confess." Emily Mercer quietly whispered. "That's why he kept saying, 'Tonight everything ends.'" Cross smiled faintly. "Exactly." Officer Mills stepped forward with the autopsy report. "The final medical opinion is complete." Case number 2. The Last Broadcast Murder. A popular late-night radio host is found dead inside Studio B, moments after finishing a live broadcast. The studio doors were locked from the inside, the security cameras mysteriously stopped recording for 12 minutes, and no one remembers seeing anyone enter or leave. Detective Ethan Cross is called to investigate what appears to be an impossible crime. As the investigation unfolds, 6 suspects emerge: the ambitious co-host who wanted the top job, the station manager facing financial ruin, a disgruntled former employee with a grudge, the host's ex-spouse who arrived unexpectedly that night, a loyal producer hiding a dangerous secret, an anonymous caller whose chilling on-air conversation was the last voice the victim ever heard. Each suspect insists they're innocent. Each has a motive. Each tells a different version of the final hour. But as Detective Cross reconstructs the broadcast minute by minute, he discovers that someone has edited more than just the audio. They've altered the truth itself. The final revelation will force everyone to question whether the victim was murdered or whether the real crime began long before the broadcast ever went live. Can you solve the mystery before Detective Cross reveals the truth? Chapter 10. The Truth. Detective Ethan Cross stood alone inside Studio B. The room had been cleared. The microphones were silent. The red on-air light had finally gone dark. For the first time in days, the station was quiet. Officer Mills entered carrying a thin evidence folder. The district attorney reviewed everything. Cross looked up. And? They agreed she placed the folder on the broadcast desk. There isn't enough evidence to support a homicide charge. Cross nodded. I didn't think there would be. An hour later, everyone gathered one final time. Harold Green, Lisa Bennett, Ryan Cole, Thomas Reed, Emily Mercer, Nathan Brooks. No one looked at one another. Cross stood before them. I've reached my conclusion. The room became perfectly still. Cross spoke slowly. Every one of you believed someone else killed Jack Mercer. He looked around the room. Every one of you had a reason to suspect someone. He paused. And every one of you was wrong. Harold frowned. What are you saying? Cross continued. Jack Mercer invited Nathan Brooks to the station. Nathan nodded. Yes. He intended to confess. Another nod. The recording proves that. Cross held up the digital recorder. It also proves something else. He pressed play. Jack's breathing. Nathan asking questions. The sudden collapse. The chair striking the floor. Silence. Cross stopped the recording. No sounds of violence. No struggle. No attack. He looked around the room. Jack Mercer died from a catastrophic heart attack. Silence filled Studio B. Emily Mercer wiped away a tear. He finally tried to do the right thing. Cross nodded. He did. Nathan looked toward the empty broadcast chair. I waited 15 years for that confession. His voice broke. And I still lost him. Cross understood. Sometimes the truth arrives too late. Harold Green stood slowly. So, the case is over? Cross answered. The death investigation is. Harold exhaled with relief. Cross wasn't finished. But another investigation is just beginning. Everyone looked back toward him. Cross opened the settlement file recovered during the case. 15 years ago, someone died inside this station. The death was ruled accidental, but records were altered. Witnesses were pressured. Evidence disappeared. He looked directly at Harold, and people remained silent. Harold lowered his eyes. I was young. Cross replied calmly. So was the man who died. Nathan stepped forward. My brother deserves the truth. Cross nodded. He does. Officer Mills added. And so does everyone who listened to Jack Mercer for all these years. Cross picked up the handwritten note found beside the microphone. He read it aloud one final time. The truth was on air. He turned the paper over. The words written on the back suddenly carried even greater meaning. Start with tape 12.
You have been listening to Murder Mystery Crime Podcast. Be sure to subscribe so you won't miss an exciting episode. And thanks for listening.